Welcome back to episode 5 of the Industry Innovators. We are very happy to be joined by Parth Pethani from cart.com. Parth, if you'd like to just take a moment to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you having me. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, I'm Parth Pethani. I'm Director of Engineering here at cart.com. I'm a very much warehouse robotics enthusiast, and I'm looking excited about the future of robots in the warehouse. So I'm excited to talk about more about it.
Yeah, and Parth is a true enthusiast when it comes to robotics. I was recently in Atlanta, and we must have spent a good couple of hours chatting about specific automation partners coming across to the US. So he's very involved in the space. So excited to have him on. Obviously, talking about the warehouse automation space, you've previously been on the the OEM, the robotics side with various different businesses, but you're now on the end user side, and I'd kind of like to start by just asking you, what challenges are you seeing in the warehouse automation industry this year, and how are companies needing to adapt to overcome them?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think one of the things that I have seen starting this year, and I think which will also go in next year as well, is the capital is scarce, right? Getting money is scarce. So it's going to be really hard to raise money or get money or anything around it. So I think what challenge or as a robotics industry or automation industry is going to be about how to find creative ways to get that cash flow in to, let's say, source your next automation project, or automation companies coming out with different flexible financing options for companies to adopt robotics or automation. So I think that's one of the challenge that as an industry it's going to be solving for. Either end user is solving from their end, as well as the vendors are solving from their end. So I think capital is a challenge. I think next couple of challenges that comes to my mind is I think this is more specific to the vendor side or maybe the seller side, is the design to implement stage is long, right? So for most of this company, most of the new vendors in the space, they are learning as they go. They have the good solutions, but at the same time, they are learning as they are implementing. I think one thing that they should start thinking about is standardizing the process. No doubt, each warehouse is unique, but at the same time, there are some aspect of warehouses that can be standardized, or the sales cycle can be standardized. So I think long design to implement stage or longer design to implement is a challenge as well. Shorter it is, better it is, because then companies can adopt it faster ROI realization. And I think the third one that definitely is on top of my mind right now is the supply chain issues around parts. So I think many of our good automation providers are from the Europe, right? And when it comes to the supply chain, or even from the East Asia, right? So when it comes to the supply chain of parts, I think one of the challenge we have is that the longer lead times can really create challenge from an automation perspective. So I think one of the requests and one of the things that I think many vendors actually started looking into is, like, as the adoption curves increases in Americas, they are trying to find a solution where they can basically house those parts, critical parts or spare part list within the United States. So I think when I talk about North America, those are the three challenges that I really think about it when it comes to automation market.
Okay, yeah, I mean they're all kind of top of mind in every single conversation I've had, and there's obviously the political landscape of the US right now with the impeachment and the elections happening late next year. I think a lot of people are probably holding off investment and pushing projects back until they know more about the economic outlook of the US specifically. But those are three real kind of target points that I've identified as well in the industry. And you talk about automation OEM. OEM or suppliers standardizing process and standardizing kind of the way they do design to implementation cycle. Are you currently seeing kind of an issue or ramifications as an end user or a customer to automation? And what are your top 3 issues in automating warehouses as an end user?
Yeah, that's a pain point, right? You touched a topic. But yeah, I think for me, I think one of the things that always come to our mind from our side is like integration, right? Integration, not just software, but as well as within the facility, right? So the integration, how does a new piece of equipment gets integrated into our business? without impacting our most important metric, which is shipping, right? So the integration complexity on how it talks to our existing WMS, how it integrates within their existing facilities, what are changes needed from our WMS side, what are changes needed from our facility side. So those integration issues or integration challenges, that it's what as an end user comes to my top of my mind when I'm thinking about it. Another thing that really comes to my mind is like the reskilling of if you think about like developing a new team for taking care of an automation, right? So we if let's say we get a new automation solution in, let's say, Idaho, right? For that, we need to think about how we will deploy our maintenance staff, or how we deploy our supervisors, how we deploy our end users to really take care of that piece of automation, because automation itself is, of course, an expensive undertaking, but at the same time, maintaining is what really matters to us as an end user. Because for me, the success story of any automation is like not just the go live, but still providing value for next 3 to 5 years, what it was intended to do that. So that something is very important to be reskilling or skilling about the automation, which we tend to run into issues with just new people finding different opportunities, better opportunities, and they're going out and just not having right documentation and stuff around that. So as an end user, that's always on top of my mind. And I think one challenge or one issue that actually I do think, and it also ties back into my earlier point, is capital being so limited, is the ROI. And of course, the ROI is a measure of cost or revenue, right? So for me, the ROI also comes into play of how much longer the time to design to implement is, because as a 3PL, our customer contracts are not long enough for us to really take a year of design and then implement it, right? We need something faster, quicker, install time quicker as well. So we can start utilizing the automation, and within that 3 to 5 years of cycle of a customer, we're able to gain the ROI that we're expecting out of it. So as an end user, those are 3-4 things I think that are important for me when it comes to like thinking about automation, new automation.
Yeah, and I completely kind of empathize with all of them, because number one, to be fair, you've got new software orchestration platforms and like SVT, like Grey Orange, that do a good job in the integration component of the WMS to the actual robotics themselves, which is, I guess, for a 3PL, really pertinent to performance. Like, you need to be able to deploy and get automation up and running ASAP. So that's one. Number two is like with Symbotic, I think is the best example I could take. When it was in its initial stages, and we talk about customers working things out as they're going, like Symbotic's system would run for 4 hours and then be down for 4 hours, and then they've now got it to a point where it'll run for like 4 or 5 days straight with 15 minutes downtime if something happens. So companies are really needing to get to that level where their Symbotic are now, but without the steep learning curve. They need to find some way to emulate performance before it actually goes live, and you have all these issues. And I guess the final point being is you've got companies like DLL that do like financing for 3PL. So you could take like a high pick system, I don't know, pack size or something, some conveyor, and create almost like a solution that's got a 17-month ROI or something like that. So how can companies partner with financing companies to provide viable solutions for 3PLs like Card? All 3 points there are amazing. And we touch on some interesting innovations, but I know that you're a man that's very connected with the space. So what are your kind of like top 5 innovations in companies this year? Who are you excited about?
This is exciting part. Yeah, let's talk about it. So I think for me, I might have a mix of companies as well as innovation, not specific company in that innovation space. So I think for me, the very first company that comes to my mind is Prologis. Prologis is pretty much has been a real estate tycoon for a long time in the United States. But I think they are coming with really smart ideas, I feel like, and innovative ideas to in embracing the technology and the AI revolution that we are seeing. I think, for example, they started a partnership with Locus recently about just RAS, like having their tenants use locals if they want to use, and I think they charge some on the square footage charges, but includes the automation. That was really exciting play for me, or really creative way for me, that I was like, wow, okay, the real estate agent who always was just taking money based on the real estate is now embracing the automation and the robotics, and the technology evolution that is coming. So I think for me, I keep an eye on Prologis as always, because I feel like they come with different ideas, and that can really. Of course, I feel like they are way ahead of just being a typical tenant landlord relationship, but at the same time, having that tech division is pretty exciting for me to learn. Just keep watching them and how they grow. Uh,
Nice.
One other thing that I actually, I mean, another company that I'm actually following quite closely is Dexery as well. So
Mm.
Dexery is pretty much came out of, I would say, not the stealth mode, but pretty much a stealth mode recently this year, where they have an AMR to do the inventory tracking and have a digital twin in the warehouses. They are supported by a lot of big companies like Maersk, including Maersk. So I think they were called Bots 10 Us before, but now I think they are Dexery. I think the reason I'm looking forward to their updates, or just keep an eye on them, is just because I think they are solving a problem which I felt like many people have tried to solve in a different ways.
Mm.
Drones were there, and there was a camera on a forklift that can solve as well. But whereas their solution is pretty much independent solution that doesn't depend on a drone on an aisle being clear, which we need for a drone for a cycle counting or any kind of purposes. So I think for me, that's another company that I look forward to and just keep an eye on.
Mm.
Um, then the next one, pretty much, I'm very excited about and very much looking forward to, is like the new developments in the ASRS space, or the Cube ASRS space.
Okay.
So with the auto store and Ocado uh, judgment that happened earlier this year, I have started seeing, at least on my LinkedIn feed or in just my news, I've started seeing a lot of new companies coming out into the
Yep.
Cube ASRS space. So it's very interesting to me, and I want to see how that area, or how that innovation, or how that technology plays out, because there are solutions which can be a little lighter on your facility needs, and might be able to provide similar solution or similar dense
Yep.
requirements that an auto store or an Ocado can provide. So I'm
Mm.
looking forward to learning about that space. Exciting space to be, for sure.
Definitely.
Um, and I think finally, of course, I think top of the whole world is the generative AI, right? The generative AI playing into WMS space is what I'm curious about. I think and just I was just thinking about an example, like when my early days at Manhattan, I
Mm.
used to, like, for example, if I had to look up an order, I have to go to an order, figure out what was the OLPN, when that OLPN was created, when was that waived, and where was the location that item what pulled off from. So I have to trace all the activity all the way to the where was the initial pick was done. But
Mm.
with the generative, I can literally say, "Hey, this is the order. Tell me where the item was," and it can just go out and tell me, and it can
Yeah.
literally save me 5 minutes of SQL writing. So I think, and that's just one example. I'm sure there are many examples like that. But I think when it comes to generative AI playing into a WMS space, I feel like I'm very excited about that as well, because I can. There is so much potential, of course, done right. There is so much
Mm.
potential to take away a lot of unnecessary monotonous tasks from, like, the people.
Yeah, yeah. The ASRS space in particular is super exciting because you've got like Pio, which is the MFC solution from well
Mhm.
that came out of AutoStore. You've got Power Cube from Young Heinrich coming
Yeah,
across in 2025. There's so many cool products coming across to the US, and I'm sure you know many more as well.
yeah, yep. No, of course, yeah. Urbex, I mean, if I'm
Yeah,
pronouncing right, I don't
Urbex,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, they came out with it. I think there is another company I forgot that I recently talked to them as well, and they have a pretty cool robot where it goes like pretty much like a I would say a roller coaster. It goes like 180-degree opposite and just grabs it. So it goes on top of the bin with four wheels on top. It's magnetic driven. That was also pretty cool. And there are, I think, couple of providers in Japan as well. They're using maglev technology to move totes and beans. So which is also another interesting way to use our cube storage ASRS kind of thing.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously we're talking about like these new market entrants, which is maybe happen this year, next year, into the US in particular. But talking about the end of this year and the next year coming up, we've seen a massive high from COVID and then a massive low after Amazon retracted the business they did. So, what are your market outlooks for the rest of this year and for next year?
I think um, for me, it's going to be, at least from my perspective, is like profitability and cost savings. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
two key drivers that any action items I take within my role currently, or within my role and future next year as well, is going to be like how do I save some money somewhere and also make sure I have profitable during that process, right? So those are the two things that really comes to mind. So even when it comes to automation, I will like, yeah, of course, I'm ready to invest some dollars in it to make an automation play. But if the automation saves me money, has a better ROI and has a better cost savings, definitely we will make a case for it. But eventually, those two are the primary drivers, profitability and cost savings. Just considering the market right now and just how the capital is very limited, and of course, everyone is curious about the EBITDA positive. Being EBITDA positive is what the primary motivator is. Like we just recently heard about Convo situation, right? At the highs of COVID, they were the unicorn, and now recently they had to close the shop. So it's very, very, very much focused on those two primary drivers for us.
Yeah, I think cash efficiency is something that I'm seeing as well. A
Yeah.
lot from even OEMs in the industry looking to save a buck where they can save a buck, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah. And you've been on the OEM side, you've been on the end user or customer side, and part of what we do on the show, on the podcast, is we talk about kind of a question from the last executive, and the person that was on before yourself was Vincent Halmer, who's been with SSI Schaefer, Kion, CMC in various capacities, and he had an interesting question which kind of pertained to if you were, or when you were at an OEM, if a third party offered a more competitive product or offering, how do you get out of your own way and your own solution to collaborate with that third party to create an effective solution for the customer?
Interesting. So let me define third party. Third party as in another's provider, if you will say, another OEM. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say two OEMs. Okay, cool. I mean, I have seen instances where we have collaborated in my past life, like in my past previous work experiences, we have collaborated with different OEMs. It was a complementary solution, right? So if they were doing A, these previous employers or previous experience was they were doing B. So they're two OEMs, X and Y. They both OEM X doing A and OEM Y doing B. They collaborated together to present a solution to the client, and client was okay to accept that because client realized that both of them has their own strong suites, and they are trying to be together to give us a holistic solution to me as a client. And to be honest, the client brought that to the to our progress OEM. So client talked to both the OEMs and like, hey, you have this one as good, you have this good. Why don't you guys collaborate and come up with a solution that can help us? And it was done. It was, I think we actually appreciated client bringing together both of us, and we had a good conversation. We started having conversations, we started designing the solutions, and we both the OEMs understood each other's strong points, and they collaborated. They actually had like a good working session. So to the question, to answer your question, yes, it is possible. I think, though, I don't see it as a no, I'm not going to work with it. The only challenge I would say is, or not a challenge, but only hiccup is going to be, of course, when it comes to the IP protection, right? So we have seen instances where if we get too much, if it's not complementary, right? First of all, if it's not complementary to each other, if they are just A's, both are doing the same thing, of course, then they cannot go together. Probably they might have to find a way where they can sell X and they can still be Y. But anyways, I think to your point, it is possible. It is being done, no doubt about it. But of course, both of them will be very protective of their IP, and that will be sorted out in the initial meetings that they realize, okay, I am protective about this and you are protective about this. How can we make it work?
Yeah. Yeah, because we saw I think at ProMat earlier this year, BG and Locust, just before came out with
Yep.
their big
Yep.
partnership, and that's an instance of almost getting out their own way to create an effective and more holistic actual
Yeah.
solution for a customer.
And yeah, that was one of the solutions that I was working when I was there with the leadership there. Um, because I think it makes sense, and I think one of the reason I think if you think about locust bots is like, and when you think about that BG put wall, the robotic put wall, I think one of the thing that locust bot does really well is within the mezzanine level or multi-structure level, you typically need a put wall at the end, right? So, for example, if you're bought on the first floor, second floor, and third floor, and if you have picks from all the four, you need some way to consolidate that picks for that order. And robotic put walls can do that. And that's where I think the real value prop for put wall plus locust bots really come into play. So yeah, that's one of the solutions that we were actually exploring in my past life. Where like, hey, how do we make AMRs work with a put wall, a robotic put wall?
Yeah, very cool. And as a bit of a closing tradition, we asked same of you as we asked of Vincent, which is for the next interview, what is it that you want to know from your fellow supply chain executives? Like, what do you want to ask them?
Okay, this is very interesting too, because I keep thinking about this question, and I keep to get answers from different people as well. I think one thing that I really trying to understand and trying to validate is like how does different everyone has different views, everyone thinks differently because their experience is different, right? So how do you like, or how a decision makers think about automation or robotics within their warehouse? Do they think as a tactical step or a strategic step for a long-term success, or a tactical step to just save cost or labor savings right now? How do they think about it, and what drives their perspective? Because that's something I'm really curious about. Is for me, like if I have to answer that question, for me it's more of a strategic play, because in the long term this is where the world is going to be, and I feel like just being forefront of the strategy, we might not have immediate 10x savings right now in this year, but eventually it will be a 10x savings eventually. So for me, it's a strategy play, and Walmart can be a very good example of that, right? MFC deployments. So that's question I always think about it, and especially when it comes to 3PL space, I feel like there are so many different decision makers, so many different things that come into play, and how does a CEO or a chief supply chain officer of a 3PL thinks about automation strategy versus a technical step?